The first time my husband showed me the footage, he didn't yell, he didn't accuse, he just looked concerned. Emily, he said softly, turning his laptop toward me. You don't remember doing this? On the screen, I watched myself standing in our kitchen at 2:17 a.m., staring blankly into nothing. Then slowly I reached up and knocked a glass off the counter. It shattered. I didn't flinch. I just stood there. My stomach dropped. I don't remember, I whispered. He nodded like he'd expected that answer, like he'd rehearsed it. I think you need help. My name is Emily Harper. I'm 34 years old. I live in a quiet neighborhood outside Austin, Texas. I work remotely as a data analyst, which means most days it's just me, my laptop, and the silence of a house that suddenly feels too big. My husband, Ryan, is a trauma nurse, calm under pressure, trusted, the kind of man people describe as steady. We've been married 6 years, no kids, just a golden retriever and a mortgage. 3 months ago, I started losing time. That's what Ryan called it. I'd find things moved. My car keys in the freezer, my phone dead with no memory of draining it. Emails sent to co-workers that I didn't remember writing short. Curt replies that sounded nothing like me. Ryan documented everything. At first, I was grateful. He wrote down dates, times, episodes. He called them. He even installed indoor security cameras after I left the stove on all night. I'm scared for you, he'd tell me, rubbing my shoulders. What if you hurt yourself? Then came the second video. This one showed me standing in our bedroom at 3:41 a.m., whispering something. The camera didn't catch the audio clearly, but Ryan swore I was arguing with someone who wasn't there. You kept saying, "Stop lying to me," he told me. I felt cold, deep bone cold. I think you're having a breakdown, he said gently. My mom had early onset psychosis at 36. It can be genetic. I didn't know that about his mom. I never met her. She died before we got married. He said she refused treatment. He said he didn't want to lose me the same way. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to remember smashing that glass, trying to remember whispering in the dark. Nothing. But here's the thing. I've worked with data my entire career. Patterns matter. And something about mine didn't add up. Because every episode happened on nights Ryan worked late shifts. And every camera in our house, he installed them himself. Before we continue, if this story already has your heart racing, buckle up, because the footage was real, but I wasn't the one controlling it. That night, when Ryan came home, he kissed my forehead like always. How are you feeling? He asked softly. I studied his face, calm, concerned, perfectly measured. Better, I said. I've been thinking maybe you're right. Maybe I need to see someone. His shoulders relaxed, just slightly, but I saw it. I'm proud of you, he said. That's a big step. A big step toward what? Commitment papers? A diagnosis he could waive in court? Because once I stopped reacting emotionally and started thinking strategically, the bigger picture snapped into focus. This wasn't about my mental health. This was about leverage. 2 weeks ago, Ryan had casually brought up refinancing the house. We could put it fully in my name, he'd suggested. If you're not stable, banks might complicate things. At the time, it stung. Now it glowed like a red warning light. If I was declared mentally unfit, he could gain power of attorney, control finances, control medical decisions, control everything. I smiled at him over dinner and asked if we could watch one of the episode videos again. Of course, he said immediately. He pulled up the bedroom clip, the one where I was whispering. This time, I didn't watch myself. I watched a background. There, on the dresser mirror, a reflection. Tall, broad shoulders. Ryan's build. My whispering? The audio was distorted, almost filtered. I didn't delete anything. I didn't confront him. I plugged in a small external drive and copied everything. Every clip, every timestamp, every so-called breakdown. Then I did something else. I installed something he wouldn't notice. A secondary recording app tied to my private cloud account. If he staged anything else, I'd have 2 angles, 2 data sets, 2 truths. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer. A criminal defense attorney recommended by a colleague. I explained everything. He listened quietly and then said words that chilled me deeper than any fake video ever could. This isn't gaslighting, Emily. This is coercive control. If he's building a record to prove mental instability, It could escalate. Escalate how? I asked. Psychiatric holds, conservatorship, or worse, an accidental incident that supports the narrative. My stomach turned. I wasn't just fighting a manipulative husband. I was fighting a man constructing a legal cage around me. The lawyer advised patience. Don't tip him off. Keep gathering evidence. And whatever you do, do not agree to see a psychiatrist, he recommends. That night, Ryan came home with flowers. For being brave, he said. I smiled. I thanked him. I let him hold me, and as his arms wrapped around me, I felt it. Not love, calculation. He thought I was weakening. He thought I was accepting the diagnosis he'd written for me. But what he didn't know was this. Every move he made, I was logging. Every lie he told, I was archiving. And if he wanted to prove I was crazy, I was about to prove something much more dangerous. That I was patient. 3 days later, Ryan brought home a small white paper bag from the pharmacy. I spoke to a colleague. He said gently, just something mild, to help you sleep. It might stabilize things while we wait for the psychiatric consult. He set the bottle on the kitchen counter like it was a gift. I didn't touch it right away. What is it? I asked. Low-dose antipsychotic, he replied calmly. Very safe. I wouldn't give you anything harmful. Wouldn't. The word echoed. I picked up the bottle. My name was printed on the label. The prescribing physician? Not a psychiatrist. It was one of Ryan's friends from the air. I smiled faintly. You already filled it? I didn't want you to stress about logistics. Of course he didn't. I'll start tonight, I said. He kissed my temple like I'd just made him proud again. After he went upstairs, I photographed the bottle. Front, back, lot number, dosage. Then I opened it. The pills inside didn't match the image on the pharmacy's website. I checked immediately. Different shape, different imprint. Cold spread through my chest. I didn't panic. I drove to a 24-hour pharmacy across town and asked for a consultation. The pharmacist looked at the pill under a magnifier. That's not what this prescription should look like, she said slowly. What is it? I asked. She disappeared into the back for testing. When she returned, her expression had changed. It's a benzodiazepine. Strong one. Sedative. Not what's on the label. My fingers tightened around the counter. Sedative. Something that could make me groggy, forgetful, disoriented. Exactly like the episodes. I thanked her, asked for documentation, and left with a printed confirmation that the pills had been tampered with. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and finally let my hands shake. He wasn't just editing footage. He was escalating. Drugging me would create real confusion, real instability. And if I reacted badly, he could call emergency services. I'm scared for my wife, he'd say. They'd believe him. He was the calm nurse. I was the unstable woman on camera. I drove home and replaced the pills in the bottle carefully. That night, I pretended to swallow one. He watched. I made sure of it. An hour later, I slurred my words slightly, walked slower, let my eyelids droop. He looked relieved, satisfied. At 1:43 a.m., I heard him move. I kept my breathing steady. He walked into the kitchen, then the sound of glass breaking, then footsteps. He entered the bedroom quietly. Emily? He whispered. I didn't respond. A few seconds later, I felt his hand lift my arm and drop it. Testing, assessing. Then he left the room. In the morning, he'd have another clip, another incident, proof that the medication wasn't enough. Except this time, I had something he didn't know about. A second camera, hidden, recording him. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I caught him staging the scene. I didn't move until I heard the bedroom door click shut. Then I opened my eyes. The hidden camera I'd installed inside the smoke detector blinked once, recording. I stayed still for another 30 seconds, then quietly reached for my phone under the pillow and checked the live feed. There he was, Ryan, in the kitchen, calm, focused. He swept the broken glass into a neat pile, then paused. He adjusted the angle of the main security camera slightly. Just a tilt. Just enough to frame the counter perfectly. Then he picked up an intact glass from the cabinet and smashed it deliberately against the edge of the sink. Not in anger, not impulsively. Controlled, measured. He stepped back, examined the scene like a photographer reviewing composition, then nodded to himself. My stomach turned. He wasn't reacting to chaos. He was directing it. He walked back toward the bedroom holding his phone. A few seconds later, I heard the familiar "No." He pulled me into a hug. "It's okay. We'll fix this. I promise." I nearly laughed. Fix this? By drugging me? By collecting footage? By building a narrative that I was unstable enough to institutionalize? Later that morning, after he left another shift, that didn't exist, I backed up the hidden footage to 3 separate drives, cloud storage, encrypted folder, and 1 copy sent directly to my attorney. Then I called him. "He's escalating," I said. My lawyer was quiet for a moment. "Good," he replied. "Good." The word startled me. Why is that good? Because staging evidence and drug tampering crosses into criminal territory. That gives us leverage. Leverage. That's what this was now. A chess match. And Ryan had just sacrificed a rook without realizing it. That afternoon, I visited the police department not to file charges yet, to ask questions. Quietly, hypothetically, what would happen? I asked the officer at the desk, if someone falsified security footage to frame their spouse as mentally unstable. His expression shifted. "That would depend on intent," he said. "But if it involves controlled substances or attempted involuntary commitment without cause, that's serious." Serious. I left with more clarity than fear. That night, Ryan brought home takeout and kissed my forehead again. "You seem calmer today," he said. "I feel calmer," I replied. And for the first time, that wasn't entirely a lie, because the power dynamic had shifted. He thought I was sedated, disoriented, dependent, but I had his tampered prescription documented, his staged footage recorded, his fake work schedule confirmed. And now I understood something else. This wasn't just about control. It was about removal. He didn't want a wife. He wanted an obstacle eliminated. And if he was willing to fabricate madness, what would he do next when that stopped working? I smiled at him across the dinner table. Soft, grateful, compliant. Let him underestimate me a little longer, because the next move wouldn't be defensive. It would be devastating. The mistake Ryan made wasn't smashing the glass. It wasn't tampering with the pills. It was assuming I wouldn't look at the money. Control always leaves a financial fingerprint. 2 days after the staged glass incident, I logged into our joint bank account. Ryan handled most of the long-term planning. I'd let him. I was busy. I trusted him. Trust is lazy. Data isn't. There it was. A new life insurance policy. On me. $1.2 million. Opened 4 months ago, right around the time my episode started. Primary beneficiary: Ryan Harper. Secondary: none. My pulse slowed instead of racing. When fear sharpens into certainty, it gets cold. He hadn't just been building a mental health narrative. He'd been building motive. If I was declared unstable, maybe I'd wander. Maybe I'd forget the stove again. Maybe I'd mix medication incorrectly. Accidents happen, especially to unstable women on sedatives. I downloaded every document, policy numbers, application forms. The health questionnaire filled out in my name. One answer made my jaw tighten. History of mental illness? Marked yes. I have no such history, which meant he falsified medical information to lower scrutiny if something happened later. That wasn't panic behavior. That was premeditation. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. His reply came fast. "Do not confront him. We're moving now." That evening, Ryan was unusually attentive. He cooked, lit candles, poured wine I didn't drink. "I've been thinking," he said softly. "Maybe we should admit you for observation. Just a short stay. Get ahead of this." Observation. Involuntary holds start that way. "I'll think about it," I said. He studied me carefully, measuring compliance. "You trust me, right?" I held his gaze. Yes. It was the most dangerous lie I'd ever told. At 11:18 p.m., he sent a text. I only saw it because the secondary monitoring app on our router flagged outgoing encrypted messaging. The contact name wasn't saved, but the message preview was enough. Soon. Just need one more documented incident. One more. Not treatment. Not help. Documentation. I didn't sleep that night. At 6:30 a.m., there was a knock at the door. 2 uniformed officers and an ambulance. Ryan stood behind them looking devastated. "I'm so sorry," he told them. "She threatened to hurt herself." The officer turned to me gently. "Ma'am, your husband says you've been unstable and talking about self-harm." There it was. The escalation. Except this time, I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I looked directly at the officer and said calmly, Before you take me anywhere, I need you to know this interaction is being recorded. And my attorney is on his way with evidence of prescription tampering, falsified insurance documentation, and staged surveillance footage. Ryan's face didn't change immediately, but his eyes did. For the first time since this began, he looked uncertain, and uncertainty is where predators start to lose control. Ryan froze, his hand still hovering over the doorframe. "You what?" he stammered. I didn't flinch. Calm is a weapon. I've documented everything, Ryan, every pill, every staged episode, every falsified document, and it's already with my attorney and the police. For a second, I thought he might panic, run, destroy evidence. But instead, he did something I hadn't anticipated. He smiled. Small, controlled, calculated. "You really think you can win this?" he asked, voice low, almost admiring. "You have no idea what you're up against." I leaned forward, letting my voice stay soft but unshakable. "I know exactly who you are, Ryan, and I'm done being afraid." The officers exchanged glances, stepping slightly closer. I noticed a subtle shift in Ryan's posture. He was no longer the calm, devoted husband. He was assessing risk, calculating odds, and he hadn't been ready for me to have the upper hand. When my attorney arrived, an hour later, I sat at the table with him, Ryan across from me, still pretending innocence. The attorney laid out everything clearly. Lab reports proving prescription tampering, timestamps from hidden cameras showing staged episodes, falsified insurance paperwork, and the new life insurance policy with Ryan as sole beneficiary. Ryan's smile faded, replaced by the faintest tremor in his jaw. He shifted in his chair. This isn't how it looks," he said. "It's exactly how it looks," my attorney replied, calm and precise. "And if we bring this to the district attorney, the charges aren't just for fraud, they're for coercion, attempted confinement, and poisoning attempts via sedatives." Ryan's eyes darted to me, searching, angry, but also afraid. Not for me, for himself. He leaned back, trying to mask the panic with a slow exhale. "You don't understand. I was helping you." Helping? I interrupted softly, letting the word hang. "You staged my breakdown. You drugged me. You falsified my medical history. And you made a life insurance policy on me while plotting my incapacitation. That's not helping, Ryan. That's predation." He went still. The mask was gone. For the first time, I saw the man who'd haunted my life for months, not the charming husband, not the caring partner, but the predator calculating every move to corner me. The attorney smiled slightly. "We can proceed with filing the complaint immediately, or we can negotiate a controlled surrender with law enforcement tomorrow. The evidence is airtight." Ryan's lips pressed into a thin line. Finally, he nodded, almost imperceptibly. As the door closed behind my attorney, I sat back and exhaled. For months, I had played his game. Now, I was setting the board, and for the first time, I felt the scales tip in my favor. Because predators always underestimate the patience of someone they think is weak. And I was far from weak. The next morning, Ryan moved through the house with a quiet efficiency, making coffee, straightening magazines, keeping up the illusion. But the energy felt different, tight, taut, nervous. The predator senses are hard to hide when the prey has learned to watch. I stayed in the living room, pretending to read, pretending to be fragile. My coffee sat untouched, a prop. My eyes followed his every move. Every glance he threw toward the kitchen counter, every pause in his steps, was recorded by a second camera I had installed last week. One angle caught the ceiling fan, the hallway, and the entryway. Nothing would escape me. When he asked about breakfast, I smiled weakly. "I'll eat later," I said softly, letting the words hang. He tilted his head, steadying me. I could feel the gears turning behind his eyes. I'd fed him the story of my vulnerability for months, and now I'd layered evidence around me like a trap. He couldn't touch me without leaving traces. He couldn't manipulate me without being documented. Every move he made, every word, every glance, was another nail in his coffin. At 9 a.m., I received a text from my attorney. "Officer Ramirez will be at your home at 10. Ryan will be taken into custody under controlled circumstances." I sipped my coffee, letting him watch, letting him think he still controlled the narrative. 10 minutes before the officers arrived, he asked me quietly, almost pleading, "Emily, what's happening?" I looked at him, calm, steady, the mask of fragility intact. I guess we'll find out soon. He flinched. At 10 o'clock a.m., 3 officers stepped onto the porch. Ryan's face paled not at their presence, but at the inevitability he could no longer manipulate. He tried to move quickly, to redirect, but the first officer held up a hand. "Ryan Harper," they said, "you are under arrest for attempted coercion, prescription tampering, and filing falsified insurance documents." Ryan's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, tried to speak, but the officer cut him off. Calm. Firm. No theatrics. I stood at the doorway, heart pounding, but a strange clarity settled over me. For months of fear, manipulation, and survival culminated in this moment. For the first time, he couldn't calculate the outcome. He couldn't control the narrative. As they handcuffed him, he looked at me. Not the weak, submissive wife he thought I was. Not the fragile, dependent prey. Me, the woman he underestimated. His eyes flickered fear, disbelief, and a faint recognition of defeat. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply watched. And in that moment, the predator was powerless. Because sometimes survival isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, calculated. Just like the revenge you never see coming. Ryan was gone in the back of the unmarked car. And I, for the first time in months, felt the house breathe again. The house was eerily quiet after Ryan was taken. No footsteps in the hallway. No gentle knocks on my bedroom door. No staged concern in his voice. Just silence. A silence that felt almost alien after months of constant surveillance, manipulation, and fear. I walked through the living room slowly, taking in the little traces of our life together. Coffee cups lined the counter. A half-finished crossword sat on the table. His jacket still hung by the door. Every object was a reminder not of love, but of control. I started cataloging everything. Insurance documents, tempered prescriptions, security footage, photos of staged messes. Everything neatly organized for the authorities and my attorney. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall that would keep him behind bars. Later that afternoon, Detective Maria Reyes called. Her voice was calm, almost maternal. "He's being processed. Charges are formally filed. Bail is unlikely. You've done everything by the book. Yeah, the evidence is airtight." I exhaled, feeling tension drain from my shoulders. Months of paranoia, fear, and careful planning had led to this. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exhausted and free. Na came over that evening, arms full of takeout and comfort. She didn't pry. She didn't ask the questions I wasn't ready to answer. She just sat with me, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. We ate in silence at the table, the city lights of Portland shimmering through the window. I told her about every step I had taken, the cameras, the hidden recordings, the careful monitoring of his movements. Her eyes widened, and then softened with understanding. "You survived him," she said quietly. "You didn't just survive. You outsmarted him." I nodded, but the weight of the experience still lingered. 4 months of arsenic, drug tampering, staged incidents, and deception had left scars, physical, mental, and emotional. Recovery would be slow, but I finally felt the first threads of control weaving back into my life. Later that night, I went through the hidden cameras one more time, reviewing Ryan's carefully choreographed attempts to destabilize me. Every frame made me shiver. Every recorded gesture reminded me how precise, patient, and calculating he had been. But it also reminded me of something else. He had underestimated me. He had believed that manipulation, fear, and isolation would be enough to break me. He was wrong. And now, every plan he had meticulously constructed was crumbling under the weight of my resilience. I went to bed that night, truly exhausted. Yet for the first time in months, I slept without fear. The nightmare wasn't over completely. Ryan would face trial, and the legal battles would continue, but the immediate threat was gone. And for now, that was enough. Because survival isn't just about escaping danger. It's about reclaiming your life from someone who tried to steal it and making sure they never have that power again. Part 10. The first taste of freedom. The next morning, I woke up without the weight of someone watching my every move. No calculated smiles, no hidden threats, no staged concern. Just sunlight spilling across the hardwood floors, warm and unjudging. It felt almost unreal. like I'd been living under a glass dome for months, and now someone had finally lifted it. I brewed my coffee and sipped it slowly, savoring the bitter warmth that was entirely mine. No one had touched it. No one had spiked it. I let the aroma fill the kitchen and breathed deeply, something I hadn't done in weeks. The city outside was alive: cars, neighbors, the distant hum of construction, but for once, none of it felt threatening. Na arrived mid-morning with a grin and a bag of pastries. "Emergency breakfast," she said, "for the woman who survived a monster." We sat at the table, eating quietly, our shared presence filling the space. There were no tears, no frantic whispers, just calm. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand, and said, "You've taken back your life. That's all that matters." I smiled, small but genuine. "I feel like I'm finally breathing again." Later, I began packing a box of Ryan's things. Not to keep, not to destroy, but to catalog evidence, reminders, and strangely, closure. Every photograph, every little note, every piece of clothing that had once symbolized comfort now told the story of deceit. I photographed each item, labeled it, and stored it securely. By afternoon, I called Detective Reyes to confirm the next steps in the investigation. "He's in custody, the evidence is complete, and the district attorney is ready to move forward," she explained. "We're building a case that will hold in court. He won't slip through this time." Hearing that, I felt a strange mixture of relief and disbelief. Months of fear, manipulation, and danger had culminated in something concrete. Ryan's carefully constructed world was unraveling, and I was still standing. That evening, I went for a long walk, letting the cool breeze wash over me. I passed a coffee shop I used to frequent, the grocery store Ryan had insisted we shop at together, the park where he'd forced quality time. Every place reminded me of control, of manipulation, but now they were just ordinary places again. I realized something profound as I walked. Survival wasn't just avoiding danger. Survival was reclaiming space, reclaiming time, reclaiming yourself. Ryan had underestimated one thing: patience, intelligence, and a refusal to be broken. He had thought fear would cage me. Instead, it sharpened me. And now, finally, I could feel the first true taste of freedom. For the first time in months, I smiled, not a fragile performance smile, but one that came from knowing I was safe. For now. And that was enough. Even with Ryan in custody, I couldn't completely relax. Months of manipulation had trained me to look for patterns, hidden agendas, and traps. My survival instincts didn't turn off just because the immediate threat was gone. Detective Reyes suggested I review everything one more time: bank statements, emails, hidden camera footage, Ryan's online searches. "We need to make sure there are no loose ends," she said. "Predators like him rarely act alone." I spent the morning going through our shared email accounts. Most messages were mundane: bills, work notifications, junk newsletters. But one subject line caught my eye: "Delivery confirmed, next steps." It was an encrypted message sent to a personal account I hadn't known existed. Opening it carefully, I read the content: a list of chemical suppliers, shipping schedules, and coded references to prescriptions. Someone else was involved. Someone Ryan trusted, or maybe coerced. My stomach sank. Even with him caught, the possibility of a hidden accomplice meant I wasn't completely safe. I forwarded everything immediately to Detective Reyes, who promised to investigate. Around noon, Na arrived, armed with lunch and relentless optimism. I shared the discovery with her. She frowned, chewing thoughtfully. "So he wasn't just trying to control you. He had a network?" "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe he thought he could manipulate someone else into helping him, like he did with the pills and insurance." Na shook her head. "Some people are born predators. The question is, can we catch them before they hurt someone else?" I nodded. "We have to. No one should go through what I did. I can't just survive this and walk away." By late afternoon, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Ryan had been meticulous. Yes, but even meticulous people make mistakes. The same attention to detail that had allowed him to plan my downfall had also left traces. Emails, receipts, camera footage. The tiny slip with the life insurance date, everything formed a web. I just had to follow it. And I would. That night, I sat by the window, coffee in hand, replaying the day's discoveries. For the first time, I felt a shift: not just survival, but agency. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was hunting in a legal, controlled, methodical way. Ryan's network, if it existed, wouldn't know I was coming. And for once, that gave me an advantage. Because the predator always assumes his prey is weak. And I wasn't weak. Not anymore. I smiled quietly to myself, letting the city lights of Portland blur into the background. The fight wasn't over. But this time, I was leading. And predators? They always underestimate the prey who learns to read the fine print. Even with Ryan in custody, I couldn't completely relax. Months of manipulation had trained me to look for patterns, hidden agendas and traps. My survival instincts didn't turn off just because the immediate threat was gone. Detective Reyes suggested I review everything one more time: bank statements, emails, hidden camera footage, Ryan's online searches. We need to make sure there are no loose ends, she said. Predators like him rarely act alone. I spent the morning going through our shared email accounts. Most messages were mundane: bills, work notifications, junk newsletters. But one subject line caught my eye: delivery confirmed, next steps. It was an encrypted message sent to a personal account I hadn't known existed. Opening it carefully, I read the content: a list of chemical suppliers, shipping schedules, and coded references to prescriptions. Someone else was involved. Someone Ryan trusted, or maybe coerced. My stomach sank. Even with him caught, the possibility of a hidden accomplice meant I wasn't completely safe. I forwarded everything immediately to Detective Reyes, who promised to investigate. Around noon, Na arrived, armed with lunch and relentless optimism. I shared the discovery with her. She frowned, chewing thoughtfully. So he wasn't just trying to control you. He had a network? Maybe, I said. Or maybe he thought he could manipulate someone else into helping him, like he did with the pills and insurance. Na shook her head. Some people are born predators. The question is, can we catch them before they hurt someone else? I nodded. We have to. No one should go through what I did. I can't just survive this and walk away. By late afternoon, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Ryan had been meticulous. Yes, but even meticulous people make mistakes. The same attention to detail that had allowed him to plan my downfall had also left traces. Emails, receipts, camera footage. The tiny slip with the life insurance date, everything formed a web. I just had to follow it. And I would. That night, I sat by the window, coffee in hand, replaying the day's discoveries. For the first time, I felt a shift: not just survival, but agency. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was hunting in a legal, controlled, methodical way. Ryan's network, if it existed, wouldn't know I was coming. And for once, that gave me an advantage. Because the predator always assumes his prey is weak. And I wasn't weak. Not anymore. I smiled quietly to myself, letting the city lights of Portland blur into the background. The fight wasn't over. But this time, I was leading. And predators? They always underestimate the prey who learns to read the fine print. The following morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. Ryan was behind bars, the immediate threat neutralized. But something in my gut told me the story wasn't over. Months of manipulation had taught me to read between the lines. And there were still threads that didn't add up. Detective Reyes called early. We traced some of the suppliers Ryan used. A few transactions went through accounts he wouldn't normally have access to. It's possible he had help or someone who turned a blind eye. Can you come by the precinct to go over the details? I grabbed my notebook and went straight to the station, my mind buzzing. Each document, each receipt, each shipping label was a piece of a larger puzzle. The more I looked, the more patterns emerged. It wasn't just random orders. There was a method. Chemicals ordered from different suppliers to avoid detection. Timestamps that suggested Ryan didn't want anyone watching him. And references to coded terms that only someone familiar with lab procedures would understand. Detective Reyes leaned over the table. See this? She said, pointing to a spreadsheet. Ryan used multiple P.O. boxes, multiple aliases, and staggered delivery times. Whoever helped him would have to know the schedule intimately. My stomach sank. It could be Simone, but she had already cooperated. That left someone else: a co-worker, a friend, maybe even someone I had trusted unknowingly. I rubbed my temples, thinking back over months of interactions. Who had Ryan interacted with outside of me? Simone and his family. There had to be a clue in his patterns. a slip in his meticulous planning. Detective Reyes handed me another folder. We're going to need your help connecting the dots. Your insights into his behavior, his habits, and his psychology are critical. You survived him. That gives you a perspective we don't have. I took a deep breath. For the first time, survival wasn't enough. Justice was the next step. Ryan had underestimated me at every turn, and now I would make sure anyone who had enabled him or anyone he thought he could manipulate next would be exposed. That afternoon, I began mapping everything: deliveries, interactions, emails, phone records. Every contact became a node on a growing web, and the gaps, those invisible spaces, were where I would find the unknown accomplice. The work was exhausting, but I felt alive. My mind was sharp, focused. Months of fear had been transformed into clarity. Every move Ryan had made was now evidence, not a threat. And somewhere, hidden in the shadows of his meticulous world, the next thread waited to be uncovered. Because predators always think they're invisible, and I had learned to see everything. 2 weeks later, after countless hours poring over Ryan's records, cross-referencing shipments, emails, and bank transactions, we finally had a breakthrough. One small anomaly stood out: a series of transfers to a lab supply company I'd never heard of, all under an account tied to his assistant, a quiet man named Marcus Lane. He had seemed harmless, polite, invisible even, but the paper trail told a different story. Detective Reyes and I reviewed everything carefully. Marcus had no criminal record, no obvious motive, but the evidence was there. He had authorized chemical orders, coordinated deliveries to Ryan's P.O. boxes, and even scheduled courier pickups. He hadn't questioned a thing. In Ryan's mind, Marcus was the perfect enabler: competent, discreet, loyal, and utterly unaware of the consequences. We coordinated a controlled meeting. Marcus came in calm and unsuspecting, until Detective Reyes laid out the evidence. His polite composure faltered. Questions were asked. Denials were recorded. Eventually, confronted with the overwhelming proof, he admitted half reluctantly, half numbly, that he had done as Ryan instructed, thinking it was all legitimate research work for the company. He hadn't realized he was helping poison someone. Didn't connect the dots until now. The realization hit him hard. Tears, guilt, shame. He didn't need punishment like Ryan's. He had been naive. A pawn, but he would face consequences for negligence. The DA offered a plea deal: full cooperation, probation, and mandatory ethics training. He accepted. With Marcus accounted for, the web of Ryan's deception unraveled completely. Every delivery, every transaction, every manipulated person in his orbit had been documented. The trial began, and the evidence was overwhelming. Ryan's years of careful calculation, his patient cruelty, his manipulation of everyone around him, were laid bare for the jury to see. When the verdict came, Ryan was sentenced to 20 years for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. His pharmaceutical license was revoked permanently. Life insurance payouts were frozen, and his assets seized. Justice had been served. Months later, I moved into a new apartment in downtown Portland, overlooking the river. I had reclaimed my life. I cooked my own meals, made my own decisions, and let sunlight fill the rooms instead of fear. And I laughed again, unburdened. Sometimes when I sip my coffee by the window, I remember the months of fear, the subtle manipulations, the poison in my smoothies. But I no longer feel powerless. I survived Ryan Harper not because luck intervened, but because I refused to be underestimated. And in the end, the strongest person in the room was the one he thought he could break. Sometimes survival isn't just living, it's reclaiming your life piece by piece. And finally, breathing freely again. The predator is gone. The prey has reclaimed her world. And this time, no one will take it away.